Welcome back to Freedom Fridays. In this episode of Freedom Fridays, we're continuing not only our series on hurts and God's healing, but we're also going to continue a discussion we started last week on the difficult situation and circumstance of miscarriage. And so we're going to take a look again, and again we have Lee and Melissa Lennox, and we're going to pick up where that discussion left off. So how long would you say, on average, would be a right amount? You know, after and I've seen the same thing, and I've heard it from others that after a couple weeks, the support kind of wanes. How long would you say, or is that more of a personal thing where, as they're involved with you, they'll see when you're ready to move?
I think personally, as someone who's lost a child, you don't ever really get over that. And so having somebody that's in it for the long haul,
Hmm.
that understands, it's almost, I've heard this said before and I don't know where, but it's like waves that come onto the sand. And sometimes, the water is very calm and everything is still, and sometimes it just comes crashing down on you. And that's how, the loss feels, is sometimes you're doing okay, but other days it's just like, you know, extremely hard. And those days are days that, and it gets better, and you start to heal, but you never truly get over that loss. And so having someone that is just passionate and willing to be with you for the long haul of that loss, willing to, let's go get coffee today and just see how you're doing. Let's share God's word together. Let's pray together. Um, and that's kind of I would hope, develop into a good friendship, a dear friendship that doesn't end when someone says I'm doing better, but it would continue.
Yes, I mean, on the one hand, it could become too much, you know, uh, being just inundated with so much from so many people that and so being overwhelmed by the love and care of our family and friends and church family, but I wouldn't think that there'd be anything wrong with that spreading out. So after those initial couple 3 weeks, maybe a month, then just to check in here and there, maybe once a week, then once every couple weeks, and then once a month, and then maybe, and this is just throwing out, timeline wise, annually around the date, not to make it a, hey, we're gonna go out and bring all this back up, but hey, I know that whatever the day is, doesn't matter. It's going to be a very rough day for my friend here. And so I want to sometime in that week go out and have coffee and encourage at the minimum,
Yeah.
just once a year, and just continue that for a while. And if the person says, I'm really okay, I still want to, get together or whatever, but I'm really okay on this, then that's wonderful. And that's going to be a case by case, because some people may want and need that. The waves come crashing down harder and faster than others, but still, even being available year after year after year on that day, just to, hey, I'm praying for you. Can we go out and grab coffee? Whatever that would look like.
So I'm gonna say something that seems like a bit of a left turn, um, but that shouldn't surprise anyone. And I hope that our listeners and our viewers see what just came to me as an epiphany, and that this is a result, the lack of soul care past the initial
Mhm.
hurt, the initial situation, the initial act of whatever happened, whether it's a loss of a loved one in any way, shape, or form, or, as I've been told, the worst loss that you can have is the loss of a child. Um, I think what we're unearthing here is a greater problem in the way that we handle church.
Yep.
And I think that
So.
this is related to how we handle evangelism now, where it's, at arm's length. I share the gospel with somebody, they make a profession of faith, and then I tell them, okay, come to church. And
Yes.
I think that what you're saying you needed, which you're accurate on, would be completely different if we had a different and more biblical philosophy of discipleship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
we need that community.
Yes, exactly. Melissa, you initially started talking about, hey, somebody who would walk this through with you and be there on an extended period. That's a discipler.
Yep.
I mean, that's who it should be. Lee, you were talking about the same thing. After annual thing. Well, we talk about discipleship is life on life or life.
Yep.
And that really shows in our modern church. And I know I'm on a soapbox here, but I don't care. That really shows a failure in our modern church that we're not doing discipleship right.
Right. It's
because if Peter and Peter's wife had had a miscarriage, who would you expect would be the one that would be right there alongside them? Jesus, because he discipled them. And then above that, after Jesus is gone, you'd see James, you'd see John, you'd see Andrew, of course, as Peter's brother. You'd see that community of disciples.
Yes.
And so I see a bigger failure in the church other than just, hey, we let go too soon as a church. I see a bigger failure as we didn't build this connection in the first place.
Right.
That would naturally give soul care to disciples and disciplers both way. It's as they say nowadays in technology, it's full duplex. It goes both directions. And
I think in getting that to the let go too soon, it's let go at all. Like, why would we just, okay, so you're good now, go back into the normal stream of life, and we're gonna just let you be there doing your own thing.
Really hurts because at that point you feel alone and abandoned. Even though you're in a church family and you love each other, you're just alone.
And honestly, to most of the church family, it's of no ill intent.
No,
they just haven't been taught what true discipleship is.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
And, it sounds like at least that one woman that walked through this with you for an extended period of time, she got some of that. I mean, obviously some of that might have been her spiritual gifting.
Yes.
She had the gift of mercy, obviously, and compassion that shows through that. But, wow, and I don't know, this just blew my mind, sorry. But that all of the things you're talking about that we could have done better are really a failure, a sinful failure on the part of our modern church.
Yeah.
And I know it may sound harsh to call it sinful, but when we're called in Matthew 28 to make disciples, he didn't just flippantly throw that word out there. He meant that we're supposed to have those long-term life-building relations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a suggestion, it was a command.
Titus
Absolutely.
2 clearly draws that.
Yep.
for the church.
Wow. So, when did you know that it was time, or did you struggle with when it was time to move on in life? I mean, obviously, it's never, you said it's never completely gone, and I get that.
Yeah.
But for the larger part, there's the time to grieve, and then there's the time to move on. And as I was reading up, some people's experiences with this situation, specifically with miscarriage, they struggled with moving on because they felt like, in some instances, they felt like if I move on, it invalidates this whole baby's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's that I feel guilty or shame because I am enjoying life. For me, it was a longer struggle after our three in a row, because we did move, because we lost our church family, because we were starting all over, and there was no support when we had nobody. And so that was much harder. And then even during the pregnancy, doctors would not see me because of the type of pregnancy I was having until I was 36 weeks. And so we didn't know if it was healthy. We didn't know how anything came out. God was so kind.
Yes.
And I was in so much sin, but he still showed mercy. But that took a long time. And subsequent pregnancies after that, there was still the anxiety and fear, especially after our last one. And the doctor did not think she was going to make it because we finally figured out what was causing all of the miscarriages, and she should not have survived. But it was learning to trust God. It was, putting into practice what I had been teaching all along, is saying, I'm going to trust God even if this is hard. Hebrews talks about we have a great high priest who understands our suffering, and I can go to him at any time. And so with each pregnancy, there was a sense of loss because I was moving on. With each new chapter, it was what would it been like if God had given us these children instead of those children. But it's trusting God through each one of those, each new chapter of our life. It was saying, my mind will be focused on who God is, what God is doing right now, and what he will do. And that when I am hurting, I can go to him. And he understands my, and I can be honest with
Yes.
So I've got a question, and then I want us to move more of, like we have with the rest of them, how do we redeem this? But during this time frame, there's been a couple of very popular Christian songs about children and their stages as they move through life, and the joys and everything. I think of Bob Carlyle's Butterfly Kisses, or Stephen Curtis Chapman's Cinderella, where he's talking about, I will dance with Cinderella one more time at the wedding, and and all of that. When you hear things like that, does that bring back any pain that I won't have these experiences with this?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, for those mothers who are wondering, it's okay to cry through those moments of loss. When our kiddos should have been turning 10 this year. That's the double digits. That's the exciting thing. Or when they're supposed to start driver's ed. when they're supposed to be graduating. They're
That's
supposed
a
to be.
blessing they don't start driver's ed.
Yeah, yeah. But, each one of those is a loss. It
Yeah.
is another added pain, but it is also then returning to God is a God of comfort, and God is all wise. He knew exactly who needed to be in our family at this very moment. And I will rejoice when I get to see the little ones up in heaven, you know,
Yes.
and meet them and see their tiny faces. There will be joy in that. And I look forward to that.
Yeah, on the music thing, I will hear the song once and then never play it again.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
and that's not necessarily the right response to it, but it's just one of those. Yeah, I don't want to think through those things I don't like. So it does bring back the thought of it, not to any specific. Okay, so it was this one, or the twins, or whatever. It was just I don't. I
Yeah.
I don't want to bring that back up and process through that again if I don't have to. So I don't know those two songs.
Then don't look them
That's
up
okay.
because you won't want to.
Right? Yes.
No, I mean they're great because there are your other children, and let's unpack this. How does it affect your relationship with the other children? I mean, you're grieving over the loss of some. I think you said 5.
Yeah.
And then, but you're celebrating the other 8 that you still have.
Yeah, for sure. And, we've never hid the fact that we've lost children. Um, Obviously, some of our older kids remember some of the losses, or they remember that mommy was just very unwell or very sad and
Yep.
cried a
Melancholy.
lot during that time. Um, and so it's always interesting to sit at the table and be like, what would it have been like without Isaac, or without Ishet? And I couldn't imagine life without them.
Yep.
You know, they are part of our family, and I'm so grateful God gifted us with them, and we get to enjoy them and watch them grow.
Yes. It's not the idea of, well, at least I have these other kids. So that, it's not going to that, but in recognizing the fact that God has allowed us to have the kids that we do have, and to celebrate that, and enjoy, I mean, just enjoying being with them, understanding the blessing, and not that anyone is more of a blessing than the others, but understanding that, not as like a constant have to think about it, but there's those moments of, no, this is great. We have these specific kids that we have for a reason, and get to enjoy them and them being here, and thinking on that side of things, of what the blessings that God has allowed instead of what He is not allowed side of things, is really helpful with that.
So, in what ways have you seen God use this horrible experience for His honor, for His glory, and for your growth?
Oh man.
Well, I'm going to throw one out there real quick. Um, one of the neat things, and I don't know how it all came about. I know God did it. I don't, but the details, the connection points, I don't know. But one of the things that's happened recently, there's a ministry, and this is not a necessarily a plug for this ministry, but I was totally unbeknownst to me, called New Mercy Moms, that reached out just looking for ACBC counselors to talk about, loss of a child, whether miscarriage or sudden, infant death or death of a child, whatever that looks like, to be able to put together a video series to help other moms that are going, or families that are going through this. Well, this lady reached out to us, and it allowed. I mean, it was just a little reluctancy on Melissa's part at first, because it's like, well, I don't want to walk through these things necessarily, but the opportunity to contribute to that series, and help others through that, and walking through scripture passages, and counseling, if you will, on that, has been a neat opportunity that came up within the past year.
Yeah. And The young woman that was so helpful to us when we were going through our loss, several years later, she went through a stillbirth.
Mm.
And being able to, even though it was from a far distance, being able to just share what God had done in our life and what a blessing she was, and we tried to be a blessing to her, but coming along other women that have had loss and realizing that it's not the same hurt for every woman, but also realizing that they need the support and being there as much as possible through their
Absolutely.
losses and showing love to and counseling through that has been just such a huge blessing in my life. Even though it hurt, God is so kind to allow suffering where we can share in other people's loss.
Yep.
And we can walk alongside them knowing that God is overabundant in grace, and he can pour it on me, he can pour it on some other family hurting as
well. Yes.
Well, thank you again for being so open and sharing. I know this had to, bring up more memories and more pain, but like you said, hopefully this video series that you're going to be involved with, Melissa, will, even in the midst of bringing up some of that pain, it will be used for other people's healing. You can show compassion, like we've been talking about, and other people can grow closer to Christ through this and grow in their walk. So thank you again both for being on this. We're going to hit that discipleship again, and we're going to hit it hard.
Yes, we are.
Because
yes, we are.
This really showed a huge problem in our church. Not necessarily our church, but the church universal at the moment. So again, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week on Freedom Fridays.